Hello, and welcome to another episode of Casual Learning. I'm your host, John Bannan. What's the deal with uncaused randomness? Uncaused randomness is simply random behavior in physical reality that appears to be uncaused without reason for its occurring. Atheists will point to what appears to be uncaused randomness in physical reality to claim that there's no need for a God. And the reason is quite simple. It's, well, if things can occur in physical reality without the need of a cause, then what do you need God for? You don't need God to cause it. So physical reality can be uncaused. Then you don't need a God to cause that physical reality. So what do you need a God for? So you can eliminate God as under Occam's razor as an unnecessary additional layer of complication uh, when the solution is simply that physical reality can be uncaused. It can simply pop into existence for no reason whatsoever and exist. Uh, okay, so what's the problem with this uncaused randomness atheistic theory? The problem with it is it doesn't exist. There's no such thing as uncaused physical reality. All physical reality is caused. Uh, the atheists will then try to convince you that there are certain phenomenon uh, that have been recorded and observed in science that apparently have no cause. And they will say, well, here's examples of things that are uncaused. And therefore, you're wrong. There is such thing as uncaused physical reality. However, that's not true. Uh, but I will go through some of these examples of uncaused physical processes, purportedly uncaused. And then I'll explain to you how actually all these things are caused and a God is still required. So, for example, someone might point to the Heisenberg uncertainty principle as an example of an uncaused randomness. The Heisenberg uncertainty principle states that the position and velocity of very small uh, objects, such as atoms or subatomic particles, cannot both be measured exactly at the same time. Any attempt to measure precisely the velocity of a subatomic particle will knock it in an unpredictable way so that a simultaneous measurement of its position has no validity. This arises out of the intimate connection in nature between particles and waves in the realm of subatomic dimensions. So, a very small quantum levels, there's this thing called the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, which basically says you can't know something's position and its velocity simultaneously. Because as soon as you figure out what its position is, it knocks it away in some unpredictable way so that you can't measure its velocity at that point either at the same time. Uh, and this is due to the particle wave duality of nature at the quantum level. You're not dealing strictly with discrete particles, you're also dealing with waves. Um, so this creates this uncertainty as to where the particle actually went when you knock it in order to measure where it is. So because you're dealing with a wave as well, it's a very loose sort of thing, and the positions are defined by a probability distribution at the quantum level. But that leads to this unpredictability of where exactly the particle is at any given time, and that uncertainty. So some people will point to this uncertainty as an uncaused uncertainty. The particle's somewhere, but we can't say with certainty where, and that uncertainty seems to be uncaused. And so we'll use this example as an uncaused randomness in physical reality. Another example that they might uh, point out is virtual particles. Virtual particles are a transient quantum fluctuation that exhibits some of the characteristics of an ordinary particle while having its existence limited by the uncertainty principle. They occur in particle scattering and Kazimirev forces. Um, Basically, in physics, there's this idea that particles can pop in and out of existence due to random quantum fluctuations at the subatomic level or even smaller. And there have been experiments which show that this is true. When there's particle collisions, there in particle accelerators, for instance, there are transient um, virtual particles form that are briefly exist and then they turn into something else, into what the eventual uh, particles end up being during a particle collision. So in particle scattering during a collision in a particle accelerator, you may run into these virtual particles, and they're also proven to exist in the Kazimirev effect, which is a proven effect where if you take two plates and you put them close enough together, you can actually measure a force, either um, an attractive force or repelling force, depending on how the plates are set up, which is actually caused by supposedly these virtual particles popping in and out of existence, and a greater quantity of them on the outside or the inside, depending, and that will create an outward or an inward force. So these virtual particles, these quantum fluctuations are random, and there's no way to predict them with certainty. And they're also subject to the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. So it's just another example of this apparently uncaused randomness in physical reality. Another example that they might point to is Hawking radiation. Now, Hawking radiation is named after Stephen Hawking, who was an English physicist who's best known for his study of black holes. Hawking radiation is where a black hole releases radiation around itself near its event horizon, mostly in the form of photons. This is due to the black hole capturing one of a particle-antiparticle pair created spontaneously near the event horizon. Uh, this results in black hole evaporation, which creates mostly photons surrounding the event horizon, which will eventually cause the black hole to evaporate completely. The extreme curvature of space around the black hole is the ultimate cause of this and results in black holes very slowly evaporating away. So, Hawking radiation is this basically photons that are being emitted near a black hole, near the event horizon. And ultimately, the energy for that is coming from the extreme curvature of space near a black hole. But over time, that energy gets taken away. And as a result, the black hole gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And over ungodly number of years, older than the universe has existed, the black hole eventually disappears and evaporates because all of its mass and energy has been converted to black hole radiation or photons, which have dissipated. But that process of black hole radiation is also, some people will claim that that's an uncaused um, form of radiation that simply comes from nowhere, even though it does come from the curvature of space. But some might claim that that's an uncaused form of radiation. Another thing that they may point to is radioactive decay. Now, radioactive decay is the spontaneous breakdown of an atomic nucleus, resulting in the release of energy and matter from the nucleus. The time of decay of an individual nucleus is unpredictable. The lifetime of a radioactive substance is not affected in any way by any physical or chemical conditions to which the substance may be subjected. So, for example, there are radioactive elements like uranium or plutonium, which are used in nuclear reactors or in nuclear bombs. And these elements break down over time through radioactive decay into lower elements, but they also release energy when they break down into these lower elements. Um, and it can be, the radioactive decay is at a predictable rate. That is, you can know the half-life of any particular element. Generally, how long is it going to take this element to decay into lower elements from its full amount to half the amount? That's called the half-life. But the point is that for any particular atom of this radioactive element, you can't predict exactly when it will decay and release energy and move down into a lower form of element. And it doesn't appear that radioactive decay is actually affected by anything physical or chemical. So it seems to be an uncaused form of randomness in physical reality. All right, so there's 4 examples of purportedly uncaused randomness in physical reality, and some atheists will point to these things and claim, aha, this proves you don't need a God. So are they right? No. No, they're not right. And I'll explain to you why. Even if all these things appeared uncaused, they're not. They're not uncaused. And the reason is because all of these things are contingent on something that we know is caused. So all of these things are contingent on two things. The first is time, and the second is the quantum field. So if you didn't have time and you didn't have the quantum field, none of these things would exist. None of these things would occur. And because time and the quantum field are both caused, then these things also must be caused. It may be unclear how they're caused, but nonetheless, they have to be uncaused because they are contingent upon the existence of time and the quantum field, both of which are caused. So, um, why is time and the quantum field caused? Why are they caused? Well, let's take time. Um, there's a couple things you can say about that. Is first, there's the Big Bang. There's scientific proof that material, physical reality had a beginning, and it was the expansion of the singularity, which is the centerpiece of the Big Bang theory of cosmology. The second thing is time has to begin because of the beginningless time paradox. Uh, and I've done a video on the beginningless time paradox that you can look at. But basically, the beginningless time paradox is a philosophical argument that proves that time must have had an ultimate beginning. And it states that an infinite regress of time is impossible because the present moment could not otherwise arrive due to an infinity of prior moments that could never be fully traversed. So, um, if there was an infinite regress in time, that is, if time didn't have a beginning point, it was unending, then there would always be a prior moment to the present moment um, that had not been traversed. So, how could the present moment ever arrive if that was true? It couldn't. That's the paradox. So, time cannot regress infinitely into the past. Otherwise, the present moment would never be able to arrive. And we know it does arrive. Therefore, time in the past must have had a beginning. And we also know this. It's supported by the Big Bang theory that time had a beginning. So, because time had a beginning, then it must have had a cause to its beginning. And that cause could not have been something that itself was subject to time because it's creating time. It can't be contingent on time. That would be self-creation, the thing creating time, which it itself is contingent upon, would be it creating itself, which is impossible. So the cause of the beginning of time has to be a metaphysical cause. That is something not subject to time. And all physical processes are subject to time. So there is no physical process that can cause the beginning of time. And because these four things are contingent on the existence of time, then they are also contingent on the cause of time, this metaphysical cause of time, which we call God. So, regardless of whether these things appear to be uncaused forms of randomness, they're ultimately caused by whatever caused time, because they're contingent upon time, and time is contingent upon this metaphysical cause. So all these things are caused. A second argument that you can make is about the quantum field. The quantum field is basically, if you want to think about it, it's basically the vacuum of space that, according to the Big Bang Theory, has been expanding since the beginning of time itself. Um, that quantum field is a real thing. It's a created thing. It was created by the expansion of the singularity. Uh, and that needs a metaphysical cause, which we call God. So the quantum field is what creates the apparently uncaused randomness that you see at the quantum level in these four areas. The Heisenberg uncertainty principle is caused by the quantum field. Virtual particles and quantum fluctuations are caused by the quantum field. Um, Hawking radiation is caused by the quantum field. Um, Radioactive decay is caused by the quantum field. So all of these things are caused by the quantum field. It may not be clear how it's caused, but it is caused by the existence of the quantum field. These things are contingent on the existence of the quantum field. No quantum field, these things don't exist. Now, the quantum field itself is a caused thing. It was created by the expansion of the singularity, which we call the Big Bang theory of cosmology. It's also philosophically caused by an uncaused metaphysical cause we call God. So the first cause argument proves that there has to be ultimately an uncaused cause for physical reality. And the quantum field is physical reality. So ultimately, there has to be a first cause which causes the quantum field, and that first cause is God. You can look at, I've done many, many videos on the philosophical arguments supporting the existence of God, and one in particular, the 12 cosmological arguments for the existence of God. You can look at that, and you'll see all the arguments for why things like time and the quantum field have to be caused by God. So, again, these four things all contingent on the quantum field. The quantum field is contingent on the existence of God, God causing it. So these things are all caused as well. Now, some atheists may claim that the quantum field has always existed, but there's absolutely no scientific evidence that that is true. The scientific evidence indicates that the quantum field was caused by the expansion of the singularity during the Big Bang. There is no scientific evidence of a quantum field that is older than the Big Bang or that pre-existed the Big Bang. Um, some atheists will claim that the Big Bang occurred within a pre-existing quantum field. But there's no scientific evidence of that whatsoever. That's a lie. It's a lie. There is nothing in the universe that has ever been scientifically proven to be older than the Big Bang itself. No evidence of it. So don't get fooled by those sort of false arguments about what the science actually shows. The science does not show a pre-existing quantum field or an eternal quantum field. No, not at all. Everything in existence, including the quantum field and all of these things, all occur post-Big Bang. If the Big Bang requires a cause that we call God, so do these things. Doesn't matter that they're unpredictable or they appear to be uncaused randomness or uncertain. Doesn't matter because they're all ultimately caused. Again, there's no scientific evidence of any sort of extra universal quantum field or greater cosmos within which the Big Bang occurred. There is no scientific evidence of that whatsoever. No one has ever found anything older than the Big Bang itself. So, uh, rationally, these supposedly uncaused random processes cannot be uncaused. Why? Because they all have ultimate causes, which are these. An uncaused thing cannot logically and coherently be caused by something else that itself has a cause. So this whole idea of uncaused randomness in physical reality, such as the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, virtual particles, Hawking radiation, radioactive decay, that's all irrational, illogical, incoherent nonsense. All these things are caused by these things because these things are caused. So these have to be caused. You can't be an uncaused thing, not an uncaused thing caused by something. That's incoherent. That's equating something that's caused with being something that's uncaused. That's not possible. The uncaused does not equal the caused. These things cannot be uncaused because they have a cause. And these things themselves are caused. Because these things require these things to exist. And because these things require a God to exist in order to cause them, then these things also require a God to exist in order for them to exist. So there's no way these things prove that God doesn't exist. It's logically incoherent, irrational, and impossible. So don't fall for this sort of atheistic nonsense. So the ultimate conclusion is all of these things here still require the existence of God because these things require the existence of God and these things cause these things. So, all of these things require the existence of God for them to occur. Um, we may not know exactly how these things are caused, but they are caused. It's possible that these things are directly caused by God's intervention. So, is it possible for something to appear to be uncaused and random if God causes it? Yes, God can create things that appear to be uncaused in physical reality, simply appearing out of nowhere. That's what the Big Bang was. So God did it with the Big Bang. God could certainly do it with these things as well. But the point is that these things still require the existence of a God to occur, because these things require a God in order for them to cause, and these things cause this. So whether God uh, directly causes these things, or whether these things are caused by these things in some unknown way, and these things are caused by God, the end result is that God is still necessary, must still exist in order for these things to occur. So however you cut it, these things do not disprove the existence of God, not at all. In order for these things to occur, there still must be a God. So this whole argument of uncaused randomness in physical reality is a nonsense argument, and I hope you understood that explanation as to why these things do not prove God does not exist. You can always replay this video if you're unsure, or you could ask me a question below and I'll address it. But I really hope that you don't fall for these sorts of arguments about claiming God doesn't have to exist because of some sort of uncaused randomness. There's no such thing as uncaused randomness in physical reality. Uh, at worst, it's caused by God. Still need a God for any of this to happen. So it couldn't be uncaused, caused by God. Um, please press the subscribe button. I appreciate it. Uh, and I know this is a little challenging because it has to do with physics, and that sort of science isn't everybody's forte. But these are fairly commonly understood physical phenomenon, and I presented it fairly. And don't fall for these arguments. All right, take care, everybody.